It is the 39th day of Donald Trump's war with Iran, and tonight he has backed off his own threats to wipe out the country. So let's take you through the day. This morning, the president posted that, quote, a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again if Iran didn't open the Strait of Hormuz. Then about 90 minutes before his own deadline, Trump announced a 2-week ceasefire deal with Iran. He said he will suspend bombing for 2 weeks if and only if Iran agrees to completely open the strait. It is the 5th time he has pushed back his deadline for strikes on Iran's power plants. The president also said the U.S. received a 10-point peace proposal from Iran, and he believes it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. It is a massive change from a month ago when he demanded unconditional surrender. Well, tonight, Iran said its retaliation would stop if attacks against Iran are also halted. The statement also said, quote, for a period of 2 weeks, safe passage to the Strait of Hormuz will be possible via coordination with Iran's armed forces and with due consideration of technical limitations. Now, all eyes are going to be on the strait in the hours and days to come as we all wait to see if the ceasefire will hold and if tankers actually want to take the plunge and what could come next. All right, now let's get smarter with the help of our lead-off panel this evening. Scott MacFarlane is here in person for the very first time, chief Washington correspondent for Midas Touch and host of Scott MacFarlane Reports. Scott, congratulations and welcome. Alex Ward joins us, national security reporter for the Wall Street Journal, and retired 4-star U.S. Army General Barry McCaffrey, a decorated combat veteran of Vietnam and a former battlefield commander in the Persian Gulf. All right, Mr. Ward, we're going to turn to you first. What can you tell us about the strait? It sounds like Iran's military is still going to control the passage. So how big of a change is this really?
It's a big change because now Iran's going to be charging tolls in order to let tankers go through. So where before they were not making money from the waterway, it was an international waterway. Now, for the moment, they'll still be charging tolls. I do think that we need to take a moment and just kind of go, no one actually knows what's going to happen here. Right, this is a ceasefire for now. All the sides agreed to it. The Israelis just a minute ago said that the Israel-Lebanon fighting won't be a part of it, even though Trump and others suggested it might be. So all we really know is this is a fighting pause, and there's going to be talks starting. Where those talks go, nobody really knows. But we do know that at the end of the day, Iran doesn't want to give up the control of the strait. And the rest of the world, including the U.S., in theory, would like Iran to bring it back to being an international waterway. So it's very possible that we're going to be right back at this point in 2 weeks' time. And we do know that Trump, when he feels that the Iranians don't deal in the way that he wants, tends to bomb. So we're not out of the woods in terms of a potential bombing here or escalation of the war. This is just a pause, and then we'll see how those negotiations play out.
All right, General, give us the military perspective on this news. What's your reaction?
Well, the primary perspective is, thank God there's a ceasefire for 2 weeks. There's no question that that will allow the face-to-face negotiations to start in Islamabad this Friday, and maybe some good can come out of it. But it appears, when you take sort of a snapshot of what we've ended up with, it looks as if the Iranians control the Gulf. They didn't before the war. There isn't a regime change. We didn't get access to their nuclear development program. And it appears that Iran will remain a threat to the Gulf Coast states. But look, Stephanie, all this is minor compared to an impression based on 2 tweets from the President of the United States on Easter Day and then today, that he is unhinged and incoherent and dangerous. And that whole notion of ending a civilization, which couldn't be done, it was sort of a drama queen kind of pronouncement, but it was coded language for the employment of nuclear weapons. So we got a problem with the President of the United States.
General, then let me ask you about the strait specifically, right? And I want to make sure I have Iran's language, because they say the passage will be possible with the coordination of their armed forces and due consideration for technical limitations. Okay, when I hear that, that still sounds very scary. Do you think these tankers that are owned by private industry with civilian employees are going to say, yep, I'm in, let's get on board?
Well, the big question will be, can a U.S. destroyer transit the straits without being engaged by the Iranians? again, I think the Iranian outcome of this war, if they end up controlling the straits like Panama controls the Panama Canal, the global economy would be in a worse place. So I don't know if this is going to hold or not, but my guess is to everybody, both sides are sick of fighting. Trump's in a political disaster. He's in a strategic box. The Iranians are being flattened by 11,000 or more targeted attacks. So I think both sides wanted to stop fighting. I think the Gulf will open, and we'll see them trying to collect tolls. There'll be a back and forth in the coming weeks until we sort this out. But again, the real problem is what is going on with the President of the United States?
That is the question. Scott, the General and Alex just laid out for us sort of where Iran is today versus where they were before the war started. Now, the president is clearly going to try to frame this as a big victory, but there is no clear indication that the United States is going to gain anything out of these talks that we didn't have before the war started. And of course, before the war started, we hadn't lost any lives or the billions and billions of dollars that we just spent. What are you hearing in Washington?
Yeah, let's put aside the military strategy for a moment and focus on the communication strategy, because the president, as the evening began, did not have broad support for this war in Iran. And what he's been doing over the past week, arguing either through unhinged Truth Social posts, that primetime speech last week, the news conference yesterday, has not galvanized that public support. And listen to what the Democrats are saying in Washington, Democrats who would have to fund any further escalations. One Democrat, Maxwell Frost, called Trump a warmongerer. Adam Smith, top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee, told me he thinks Trump is either morally demented or a monster of seeking war or seeking military pain on civilians. These are Democrats who are joining the group saying maybe we need to take a deeper look as a party at calling for the 25th Amendment, calling for impeachment. And Stephanie, those are political arguments. But Trump's communication strategy has yielded that response from Democrats, who he'll need for funding, and still a tepid public response to this war.
Alex, other countries played a role here. Obviously, Pakistan took the lead, but the New York Times reported that the last-minute intervention from China helped convince Iran to agree to this. How significant would China's involvement be here? I mean, that was a surprise to a lot of people.
I mean, China is a close partner of the Iranians. You don't necessarily want to say ally, but it would make sense for China or even Russia to quietly make a case to the Iranians that they do have something to gain from this kind of moment. But I mean, the reason China is resonating, I think, is because there's a bigger discussion about the strategic wins or losses of this war. I mean, if we want to be honest, it feels like both sides kind of lost. Right? On the Iranian side, yes, the regime got decimated. Its military got beaten up. It's lost a lot of support within the region because it attacked a lot of countries in the Middle East. But if you also look at the U.S., Iran still has the nuclear capabilities. It is not stopping its proxy work. It has, is making money off the Strait of Hormuz because of the gas prices going up. It's actually making more money now than it was before. The U.S. has alliances strained with the Europeans. There are countries in the Middle East that are unhappy that the U.S. started this war. Allies in Asia that are struggling because of the high gas prices. If you look at the broader strategic picture here, we shouldn't even mention, actually, speaking of China, the number of munitions that the U.S. has used for this war could lead to strategic complications when thinking about a possible war with China over Taiwan. So you look at the broader picture here. Did the president meet the tactical goals of decimating a lot of Iran's military and assets? Sure, fine, you can make that case. But was it worth the trade of these strategic issues that I just outlined and others have discussed? You can have that debate, but I think if you look at the ledger, you think, yes, Iran is hurt. They're not in a particularly good situation either, but it still might not have been worth all that the U.S. has spent and worked on to get to this point.
Well, one thing we have not heard about tonight is Iran's nuclear stockpile and these earlier demands in stopping the enrichment of uranium. What do you think all of this means, General?
Well, from the start, the whole notion that the Iranians would hand over the 1,000-pound, 60% HEU fissile material and maybe 5 tons of additional fissile material was sort of nonsensical. They weren't going to do it. And the notion that the U.S. Armed Forces would go into Natanz and Esfahan in a multi-day operation with engineering units and dig it out and fly it out was utter nonsense. So I think probably the military strongly pushed back on the White House, along with other crazy ideas to go up and attack Kark Island, 400 miles up the Persian Gulf, with U.S. Navy and amphib ships running a gauntlet of missile fire to get up there. So there weren't many military options left to President Trump. And now he's sort of stuck with the outcome. I think, by the way, the notion of running out of munitions, particularly the very scarce Patriot THAAD missile defensive systems, was a real factor, not just in deterrence against China attacking Taiwan, but continuing the war in and of itself. So, but again, let me go back to the initial thought. I think the real problem is in NATO, in South Korea, in Japan, in Australia, the world community is saying these Americans are no longer a values-based organization. We can't trust them. They make demands to seize Greenland, to annex Canada, to attack Venezuela, to threaten to take back the Panama Canal. I think our credibility in the global community is zero.
Zero? Then where do we go from here?
Well, we got 2 more years of this. So again, the real problem is the President of the United States. There doesn't appear to be any longer a national security process that I worked in under 3 different presidents. There no longer appears to be any real credibility to Article 1 of the Constitution dealing with Congress, their control over appropriations, nominations, and oversight functions of the armed forces. They've left the legal field to the President of the United States. So I think we're in a period of absolute crisis of credibility in the President of the United States.